something out. I might be on something.
So, how you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing good. Let me get this thing off the screen here. Oh, wait a minute. That ugly thing, that's my face. Never mind. All
so,
right, here we are.
so how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. You?
Oh, another day in paradise. It's
Well,
hot in Kentucky. We're used to the problem with hot in Kentucky is the humidity.
I know that.
The humidity will kill you. I mean, it's just so hot.
That and they have big flies.
Oh yeah, we got big flies and big everything. If it's a bug, it's big in Kentucky.
We had when I was in Badlands, our bus driver was from Kentucky. He had a horse ranch there. One day, we had a couple of days off and I stayed there. And I remember they had flies there that were the size of tennis balls.
That's funny. So, I guess we'll get right into it, man. The first question I always like to ask people if they're in music, if they're in any kind of entertainment, is what made you want to become a musician?
Um, I actually, always liked music, but I had no ambitions to be a musician or anything like that. But there were some kids in my neighborhood. They were a couple years younger than me, and one day they approached me and said, "Hey, if you buy a bass, you could be in our band." And I thought, hmm. I had just graduated high school, and I was theoretically supposed to go to college to play baseball, but I didn't really want to go to college. I didn't mind playing baseball, still play baseball, but I didn't want to. I didn't think I could deal with college. I wasn't a very good student, and so when they said buy a bass, I went to the pawn shop and bought a bass for like $45. It was the worst piece of junk you ever saw, and they had an amp, and we got together and had what I suppose was a rehearsal. No one knew anything, especially me. And I think they showed me how to play parts of a couple of songs. And when that rehearsal was done, I said, "That's it. I am going to be a bass player." And that's kind of how my career started. It was not planned in any way, shape, or form.
What was the first song you ever learned?
I learned part of "Inside Looking Out" by Grand Funk, which I started playing in 1971 or 1871. It was 1771. I can't remember. It's been a while. But I always had high goals as a bass player. So I didn't pick the simplest material like all the way for guys who could really kind of play. So rather than just learning how to go, I wanted to be able to do all that kind of crap. And all the bass players I liked played like that. So it was, you know, the learning curve was very high. So I started learning how to play like Mel Shocker of Grand Funk and Felix Pappalardi from Mountain and Tim Bogert from Cactus. And of course, you got to throw in your John Paul Jones and your Geezer and all that kind of stuff. John Entwistle, my very favorite bass player. So Andy Frazier from Free. I started learning how to play those kind of songs, and um, those were very ambitious stylings for someone who had been playing the bass for a couple months.
Do you remember the first time that you ever stepped on stage and played in front of somebody?
First place I ever played in front of anyone was at a kegger in the rec room of the drummer in the band I was in. His brother lived in these apartments, and they were having a kegger. They were all graduating high school, and so they had a kegger in there, which was, I'm sure, illegal because none of them were old enough to drink. And we played in there, in their rec room, and a lot of other musicians showed up because it was just a new band in the neighborhood. We were called Ghost Rose, and that was my first time playing in front of people. And I'm pretty sure we were awful,
Hmm.
but it was a good time. And for the first time, I suppose things could have been a lot worse. First time I was ever on an actual stage. Um, my brothers went to a high school out here called Apollo High School, and they used to have a thing at lunch where they would bring bands in and let them play in the cafeteria. And so we arranged to play in this cafeteria. while all the high school kids were having lunch. And pretty sure it wasn't quite as awful. And we had been a band at that point for maybe a year, but we didn't play the standard uh, top 40 pop material that bands played, to play at those kind of events. We played like Highway Star and Parchment Farm and, a bunch of really hard rock adventurous songs. And I'm not sure how well we went over. The interesting part is my mother and my aunt came to see that. And they were kind of impressed by the fact that we could actually pull this off.
So, what was your first when you were growing up? It was vinyl and 8 tracks, and I guess cassettes were starting to come in a little bit there. But what do you remember the first vinyl was you bought and put down on a turntable?
About a 45 of the Young Bloods. The Young Bloods doing a song called "Darkness, Darkness," which was eventually covered by Robert Plant. A real moody kind of introspective sort of song. And I'm kind of drawn to that kind of music, those kind of songs. So that's the first 45 I ever bought. First album I ever bought, I didn't have a record player. When I got one, the first album I ever bought was the first Sabbath album.
First Sabbath, wow.
And that's when that first came out. And then from that point on, I got into the record buying addiction. And it was Humble Pie Rocket, Fillmore, and Wishbone Ash Argus, and Johnny Winter and Live, and Who's Next, and Onward Mountain, Nantucket Sleigh Ride, all that kind of stuff.
Now, I'm kind of skipping ahead because you had mentioned Black Sabbath. Did you think when you walked in the room, you tried out for Black Sabbath, or was it Black Sabbath or Ozzy? Did you try it out for?
We tried out for Ozzy.
Did you think did you go back to being did you go back to being that little kid who bought Black Sabbath and go, holy crap? Because I know I do. Like, when I was in school, Badlands was, coming up, and I was young, and it's like, for me to talk to you is a privilege to me. It's like, because you were the one who bands like yourself are what paved the way for me to be who I am today as far as music and the music I like. So for you trying out for Ozzy, did it seem surreal at first? Did you go? Did you get fanboy at all, or had you already just got to the point where it's like, it's a job, I'm going to be doing a job if I get this gig?
I moved to LA in '82, and I got to meet a lot of people while I was there, and a lot of them were guys that were, getting record deals. And I played in a band with Ron Keel called Steeler, and we were real popular. So a lot of times when we would play, other musicians that had record deals, and some of them, whether it's Ronnie James Dio or I wish I could think of some names of guys that would come to Steeler gigs. All the Motley Crue and Wasp and all these guys, and the guys from Rat, they would all come to the gigs. So I was used to being around guys that made records. Tommy Oliver was there a couple times. So I was meeting guys kind of that were farther down the road than I was. When I went to audition for Ozzy, I had been playing long enough, and I had moved to LA specifically for business. Was there for a reason. I had to come there from Arizona. So I was pretty serious about what I was doing. Without sounding like a jerk, I had a pretty confident feeling in my ability. And I knew that if I could, get there and play, my playing would speak for itself. Meeting Ozzy was cool. He wasn't overly friendly, but that it's in the auditioning process. And even though I was there for 3 weeks, he kind of kept his distance. But I think at the same time, he was trying to figure out what kind of person I was. It was during the Ultimate Sin. They were auditioning for that record and tour. And they had already auditioned maybe 5 guys, I think. They were going to see, or I think they were going to see 7. And I think I was the 7th guy. And the way they had done it is they had a cattle call on MTV, and they said send in your tape and your song, and of you playing a photo, a bio, and a tape of you playing it. So I sent them in a really garbage tape that I made playing my bass without an amp into my ghetto blaster while a song was going on in the background, and a photo, a good photo. And I wrote a bio. I certainly didn't pay any money to have any of this done. So I didn't think I was going to even get a call. When I got a call to go audition, I was pretty surprised. The audition wasn't in LA. They actually flew me to Inverness, Scotland.
Wow.
And part of the caveat is I said I would go, because at first I wasn't going to go. Sharon Osbourne and I kind of negotiated a thing for me to go to Scotland where they were auditioning, but they had to take me to see Loch Ness. I wanted to see Loch Ness, which they did. They took me to see Loch Ness. I did see the damn monster, though. So by the time I got there, long story slightly longer, they knew what my job was. They didn't play any old material. They played all material that was going to be on the Ultimate Sin, and so it's not like I could have done my homework before I got there. And when I found out they weren't doing any of that, that actually was all right with me, because that way I was creating bass parts that didn't exist at that point, and I was comfortable with that. Having said that, Jake and Randy Castillo and I would jam every day before Ozzy was there. And there was a lot of interesting long jamming going on, which was a lot of fun, but I don't think any of it ever turned into that song. But,
that was a pretty bad time for Ozzy, right? Because if I got my timeline right, I could be wrong. Randy had just passed away, right? And
he passed away 2 records. So they'd done Bark at the Moon.
Bark at the Moon, yeah.
And then, so I think Randy had passed away. I don't remember what year Randy passed away, but this is at least probably 3 years later.
But Ozzy was still probably going through it at that time, right?
Pardon me?
Ozzy was pretty much going through it still, just emotions after Randy had passed away.
Well, that and the fact that Ozzy was a drinker back then, so he would. We would go to the pub at night. I was there for 3 weeks, so we would go to the pub every night. We'd rehearse in the day, go to the pub at night, and a pub in Scotland or England, wherever, is like a family gathering place. It's not just a bar, like so we would go to this particular pub in downtown Inverness, and they would play pool, or we'd play darts, and everyone would have a pint. I don't drink, but everyone would do whatever, and then I'd sit there and play darts or pool with some guys from Scotland. I couldn't understand a damn word they said, even though English. By the time their accent gets on it, I was just going, yeah, sure, right. I had no clue, but they were real cool. I had a really good time with them.
That brings up the point. You said you worked with Randy because he was the drummer at the time, and then you also played with Ray, 2 great musicians who passed away before their time.
I also played with Robin Crosby, another great musician who passed away before his time, guitar player from Rat. So, it's, and as time goes on, unfortunately, that's just kind of the way that is. I'm here in Phoenix, and there's a lot of musicians here in Phoenix that I've played with or that I've known for a long time that have passed away way before their time. So it's just kind of.
When did you play with Robin?
When I first got to LA, Rat was auditioning bass players, and a friend of mine named Bobby Marks, who was the drummer in Steeler when I first got in it, recommended me to Robin. Robin called me. I went over to his house in Manhattan Beach, sister's house actually, and we just sat around and jammed, him and I, and kind of discussed musical philosophies, and him and I kind of hit it off. And then I went to the audition. This at the time Juan was playing in Dawkins.
Okay.
They had done EP. EP was done. It was about to come out. That had like You Think You're Tough and Back for More and all that. I forget what that EP is called. And went and auditioned, got the gig, rehearsed with them 3 or 4 times, and we just played songs that they would do live. They had some live shows coming up. 1 second.
Take your time, man.
They had some live shows coming up, and before I could do a live show, I ended up getting pneumonia. I didn't realize that I was in dry Arizona, living 2 miles from the ocean, and it was in the wintertime, so I got really sick. So before I could do any shows with them, I got pneumonia, and then they ended up getting another bass player named Joe Chris, who was in the band until they got their Atlantic deal, and then they went back to Juan. The caveat to that is when I got the gig, they told me if Juan was going to have to make a choice, they knew they were going to get a record deal, and Juan was going to have to make a choice to either stay in Dawkins or come and join Rat again. If he stayed in Dawkins, I would keep the gig. If he decided to come back to Rat, they would give him the gig because he played on the I only rehearsed with them as I'm really good friends with Bobby Blotzer. And like I said, Robin and I were really good friends. And even after I was out of Rat, he and I would get together now and then and just jam a little bit. He liked my bass playing. Robin's a real kind of a student of the 70s as well. So we would kind of just jam on different things.
Robin, to me, was what made Rat. When I was growing up, Rat, when I looked at Rat, I looked at Robin because Robin was so much taller than everybody else. And he was such a more massive guy in the band. Robin was, he was kind of like Janie Lane. Janie wrote all of the Warren stuff pretty much. Robin wrote a lot of the Rat stuff to become famous, So, that's wild that you would have almost ended up in Rat at that time period. That's a cool story.
Yeah, I think I was with them for about maybe 6 weeks. And I mean, to me, and they've said it themselves, I mean, Robin was the heart and soul of Rat. And I mean, they stayed together and they've done different variations of it, but, and nothing against Carlos. I think he did a great job in the band. But to me, Rat is those 5 guys. And I agree with what they've said. Robin was kind of the heart and soul of the band. Robin was a very much so a bigger than life person. I mean, he's a big dude anyway. I think he was 6'5", but when he came in a room, he could have been 5 feet tall. When he walked into the room, you just kind of gravitated towards him. He was a great guy. I miss him. I think about him every day, to be perfectly honest.
And his woman at the time just passed away, Tawny Katane. She just passed away a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I met her through Robin.
You probably have met her before when you were at Robin's place, I imagine, right? Weren't they together at the time?
That's what I was saying. I met her a couple times through Robin, and she was very nice, and nothing like what you saw on her on-screen persona. She was at that point. I mean, I didn't know her later on, but at that point, she was pretty down to earth, and he was kind of like, if you're friends of Robin's, then you're good with me.
Yeah, well, that's a wild story. I never even knew that, man. I'll just tell you, I don't really research a lot. I know you were in Badlands. I know you were in Steeler, and I know you got your own band going on now and things like that. But I try not to know a whole lot. I want you to tell the story, per se. So when you hear me say, "Oh wow," that means wow, I didn't know you were in Rat for a half minute. That's a pretty cool story. Right now it's weird because Steven's with Juan, and Juan was the reason Rat wouldn't get back together for the longest time. But now Steven's with Juan, and Steven's trying to get the four original members of Rat to get back together to do one last album. So we'll see what happens. I know there's a lot of friction with Bobby and the rest of the guys. And you see that with a lot of 80s bands, like LA Guns, for instance. Stephen Riley's got his own LA Guns, For the longest time, the original Bullet Boys had their own band, and Mark had his own band, but now they're back together. So there's a lot of that going on in 80s bands. Jack Russell has his Great White. There's another Great White. Do you think that do you think that's because people get older and just can't get along? Or is it too many chiefs want to be chiefs and there should only be like a group of people getting together and loving what they do?
Well, I mean, I know Stephen Riley, and Tracy as well, and I think in a lot of those situations, those bands, when you have all those guys were all together when they, were at the peak of their career, spending time with Rat. I mean, I can tell you that all five of those guys all were very headstrong and had their own ideas and their own personalities. None of them are completely right and none of them are completely wrong, but the combined unit of the five guys in Rat, and obviously there can't be a Robin. So those four guys with whoever else plays guitar, they're stronger than any of them on their own. I mean, Steven does his own stuff as well as Rat does.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if any of the other guys have done it, but I mean, when people want to go see Rat, they want to go see those four guys. I think when people go see Great White, I'm sure they would like to see the original or the band that sold all the records. Whether that's ever going to happen again, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of those bands. It's like Dokken. There's a lot of strong personalities in there that tend to rub each other the wrong way, and maybe sometimes for the sake of the children, they have to go their separate ways. But I think when people do get back, I mean, people go see Warrant, they can't see Janie. They go see Warrant anyway. Play all the hits. Robert Mason's a good friend of mine.
Great singer, great frontman.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He lives here in Arizona as well. And so I think that if it's possible, it's nice when they can all get back together. I hope Rat gets back together and does one more album and tour. And I'm sure they would do better business than they would do separately.
Well, if the Bullet Boys can get back together, anybody can get back together. If the Bullet Boys can get back together, anybody can get back together.
I've known Lonnie a long time.
Yeah,
I mean, hopefully people can put their differences, aside, put that in the past, and then they get together and go out and maybe when they're on the road, don't hang out together so much. And
let me ask you this.
Great shows.
You were in Steeler with Ron Keel. What happened that you didn't end up being in Keel? Was there something that happened that you didn't end up in Keel?
We couldn't seem to get a record deal. Actually, we had been trying to get a record deal. We played all the best shows in LA and best places, and for some reason we couldn't get a deal. Ron was going to. I got an offer to join Michael Schenker Group
nice.
Around the time of Assault Attack, and Ron was, auditioning for Black Sabbath, or thought he was going to maybe get in Black Sabbath. That didn't happen for him. And Michael ended up having some issues and was off the grid for a year or so. So I wasn't going to do the album. I was going to do a tour. And someone in his management had seen me play in LA and liked it or whatever. So Ron had already decided, even if he had joined Sabbath, he was going to do this other band, Keel. But he wanted to have kind of younger musicians that he could kind of mold into the shape of what he wanted that band to be. It was going to be called Keel. It wasn't going to be, he was going to be the focal point. He would do the interviews. It would be the Ron Keel band.
His whole thing.
And for me, I had played with him in Steeler, and our deal was him and I split everything 50-50. We both wrote a bunch of songs together. If he was doing an interview or a photo shoot, I was involved in it. That was, when he asked me to join his band, that was part of my negotiation. Here's what if you want me to be in your band, here's how much money I want, and here's what I want from a publicity point of view. And when he started Keel, that wasn't going to happen. Now, having said that, my brother was the bass player in Keel. I introduced him in my great for my brother. I introduced him to Brian J., who was my roommate. So those guys all got to go on and be in Kiel and experience all that, and that was great. And I was happy for them. I just had to wait a little bit longer for my time to come.
Well, how did you? I know that you met Jakey Lee, obviously when you tried out for Ozzy. Were you? Is that how the whole thing come together with Badlands?
I mean, I'd heard of Jake before I'd ever seen him play. I would go, we'd go to the Troubadour or the Roxy or whatever, and he might be there, and people would say, "Hey, look, there's Jake Williams, my roommates. There's Jake Williams. He's the best guitar player in LA." And so I actually got to meet him while he was in Rough Cut at a club in Santa Monica called Madam Wong's West. And not only did I think he was the best guitar player in LA, I thought he was the best guitar player I'd ever seen. So when the opportunity came to audition for Ozzy, part of my interest was to, of course, go audition for Ozzy because of the whole, history of Ozzy. But also I wanted the opportunity to play with Jake. I didn't know him. I'd met him one time just in passing. I introduced myself to him at a bar one time, just, "Hey, I saw you play. You're great." He was very nice. But when I went to Scotland to audition, part of my motivation was to, meet him. And, maybe at some point, if I didn't get the Ozzy gig, maybe we would get in a band or whatever. I didn't know. It was just kind of like a crapshoot. Well, him and I ended up kind of making a friendship while I was in Scotland. We have a lot of the same interests. And when I didn't get the gig, he told me, "Look, someday I'm going to leave Ozzy and I'll start my own band, and I might want you to be part of that." And I said, "Cool, I'd be interested." And then while he was in Ozzy, he would kind of call me from the road, if he was bored, and he's a night owl, so he'd be up late at night and he'd call me and we'd talk about whatever. And when he'd come into town, when they'd have a break, we'd get together and go out to eat, or he'd come over to my house for dinner, or whatever. And we kind of developed a friendship. I always say that Jake and I would have been friends even if we weren't musicians. It's just, two people that we're kind of like opposite sides of the same coin.
Oh, wow.
Very similar in a lot of ways. And over the course of all this time, I've always maintained a friendship with him. Always kind of say more like brothers than friends.
That's wild. And so were you the first person that welcomed into Badlands? Then Eric came in, then Ray came in, or what?
No, I was the last person in Badlands. When he was going to put the band together, he was going to audition Ray. And I'd go over his house and he'd play me some of the ideas he had for songs he had on my cassette. And he'd say, "What do you think?" or this or that. And here's what I'm doing. And I'd say, "Oh, yeah, that's really great, whatever." And so he got together and did a jam with Ray. And Ray came out from New Jersey or New York. He stayed at Eric's house. And I don't know who they used on bass for that, or even if they had a bass player. For some reason, I couldn't be there because I think he asked me to be there and I couldn't. Well, then once he decided on Ray, he decided he wanted Eric as well, which I thought was a great decision. And then he wanted me to audition, and I had one second. I had misunderstood him. I thought I was just going to get the gig. He played with me in Scotland for 3 weeks. He kind of knew what my deal was. Hang on one second. Riley, there's something on my computer screen. I need my technician. My technician down here, and I can't even see you right now. Here, take this off of here, would you? Hold on. Okay, come here. This is my lovely daughter, Riley.
How are you doing?
She's my technician because I can't do anything. I'm a technological idiot. So this is who makes it work.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So anyway, I didn't know I was going to have to audition. So all my friends knew that I knew Jake, and I figured if I didn't get this gig, I'd look like a boob. So I just said, when you've auditioned everybody, call me. If you haven't found anyone you like, call me. And so after they'd auditioned 40 something odd guys, he called me and said, "Are you going to come down or not?" I said, yeah, I'll come down. Went down, auditioned. I actually auditioned 3 times and I got the gig. And I got to be part of a great band with great players and great songs. It was pretty damn groovy.
Do you now? Did he already have a record deal, or did he have a record deal after you all got together?
Didn't have a record deal, didn't have a label, didn't have a manager, didn't have anything. It was just, him putting it together. He had, I think, some money saved up from Ozzy, so he was footing the bill of everything. And right after we started writing, or he started writing basically, we started having record company people come over and management people come over. And we had a lot of different people come over to, try to pick up the band. And we had a number of offers out there from different managers and different record companies. And we ended up going with the people we went with, and we went on Atlantic's kind of sub-label Titanium, which was probably a huge mistake. But, it is what it is. It was what it was. And we managed to make some records.
But after the first record is when Eric left.
Yeah, we decided to part company with Eric after the first record. And then Eric went and joined Alice Cooper. And then from there, he's been in Kiss ever since. And Eric's a great drummer. I mean, I can't say anything negative about Eric whatsoever as a musician. He's like clockwork. He's always where he's supposed to be musically. You don't have to look at him. Everything is just right on the line all the time. We got Jeff after that. Jeff's a great drummer. He's completely different. Jeff is like you're riding down a real curvy road high up in the mountains, and you're riding near the edge and you're out of control. You're almost out of control all the time, but he manages to keep it in. It's very exciting. You never know what's going to happen. Jeff is a real kind of fly by the seat of the pants kind of guy. So 2 completely different drummers, both great in their own right. And
you all made 3 records out of that.
We made 2 in a demo. We made the first record with Eric. We made Voodoo Highway with Jeff, and then we made the 3rd record as a demo. Which wasn't called anything. It was just us demoing songs for other record companies that were interested in signing us. And then when the whole thing went south, years later, a Japanese label picked it up. Jake and I remixed it, and we put it out. And it's my favorite of the 3 because it's basically a live record. There's no overdub.
Really? Wow. So, but that has Ray on it, right? That's got Ray Gillen on it, right?
Oh yeah.
And
that's Jake, Ray, me, and Jeff.
What was it that made Badlands? I have 2 questions for you. What was it that made Badlands so special to fans like me and other fans? And what was it that made Badlands implode? Really, why is it a band like? Let me rephrase it. Why is it a band like Badlands? Okay, great band. Okay, with Eric, without Eric, whatever. Okay, as long as you have Jakey Lee, you and Ray Gillen singing. Of course, Ray passed away, but what makes a band that is so good implode? Is it because it came out during the grunge time, or was it just a bunch of people that couldn't get along, or what was it that because I know Ray went on to be in Sunred Sun, and done several albums with that project. I mean, what happened?
Well, the Sunred Sun thing was something Ray just did near the end of his life. I don't know how committed he was to that band or material. It was just a guy that was doing it, had some money, and Ray was kind of thinking, Ray had was and had with his mom and all, he's kind of, I think he was very involved with his mother as far as living there and helping out and all that sort of thing. So I mean, and I'm assuming I don't know for sure, but I mean what Ray did after Badlands was just kind of looking around for whatever interested in him.
But I'm
I know
talking
he
about
did a record with
Badlands. I'm
Lynch
talking
and he
about
did some.
Badlands for the most part. What happened to, because I mean, Jake E went on
Well,
to be gone for like many, many years from the music business. Nobody knew where he was. I remember watching the Headbangers Ball, and Eddie Trump's like, "Is that Jakey Lee behind us?" You know, because nobody had seen him, and everybody's like, "Holy crap, it's Jakey Lee again!" What happened in Badlands for that all to happen that way? I mean,
I mean, bad management off the at first. Our first managers were not. They they kind of mishandled us. We signed with the wrong label. They didn't know how to promote us, and you're going to get four. The original band, you're going to get four guys that are all at the top of their musical game. So you're going to have four different egos involved. And again, no one's completely right. No one's completely wrong. Everyone has an idea of what they want to do. I mean, for the most part, it was a great band. Um, you asked what made it so great. Well, we believed in what we did. We didn't sell out. We didn't write some stupid hit, soft rock ballad. We stayed true to who we were, our 70s influences. We didn't try to be anyone that we weren't. We believed in what we did. We didn't really care what the record company thought. We didn't want to write with outside writers. We believed that we had the goods to do it ourselves. Had we had better management or whatever, maybe we would have sold a lot of records. I don't know. And I don't even really care. I mean, we did what we did. I'm happy with what we did. Had it been bigger and more successful, yeah, that'd been great. The one thing I will say, if Ray were still alive today, I'm 100% positive that Jake and he and myself would have done other things together over the course of time. I think that Jake's often said that Badlands breaking up broke his heart. It broke mine as well. I mean, it
mhm.
was hard. It was hard when that ended because we really believed in what we did and we weren't sure, what are we going to do now? I got out of the business. I moved back to Arizona and raised my kids. Jake kind of went off and did his own thing and kind of made a solo record and played on some other people's records and kind of got off the grid for a while till he figured out what he wanted to do and then came back strong with Red Dragon Cartel.
And I have to say, I still have to say, Badlands, the very first album, is in the top five albums of my my life. I mean, I remember buying that from Columbia House on cassette and playing the shit out of it. It was just like it was like it was like that record was wrote for me, like Motley Crue was wrote for me, you know. And when you're another band, and I think you played with Red Dragon Cartel for a little while. We can talk about that, but when you meet fans that know who you are, does it amaze you that they still remember Badlands and they go, "I love that album," or is it ever going to be put out in vinyl again? You know, I mean, things like that. I mean, how is it when you meet fans? What do they think? What do they say?
Well, I mean, a lot of people hold that first Badlands album in very high esteem, and I'm grateful for that. It's always nice when you're involved in something that seems to reverberate with people for any amount of time, never mind this long time, that 30 years or whatever. And so, I mean, I'm grateful and uh, I believe in the work we did. I think we made a good product, and you know, whether it's ever going to come out on vinyl again or not, I don't know. And I don't really worry about it too much. It is great. Not, it still stands the test of time. I think both records do. And I'm just happy to have been part of it. I mean, I run into a lot of people that say Badlands was their all-time favorite band, or Badlands was supposed to be the next Led Zeppelin, or Badlands music changed their lives. And what do you say to that? All you can really say is that you're grateful, and I'm glad that people really seem to feel that way, and they really seem to like it. And uh,
You said that you quit music. What made you quit? Were you burned out, or did you just
yeah,
decide you wanted to raise kids?
you know what, I after Badlands, I played on a bunch of other people's records for a while, even while I was still, even after I moved back here to Phoenix. And I played in bands, but it was just kind of like goofy cover band sort of stuff.
Hmm.
But mostly I turned down a lot of offers to play in other bands that had record deals. So I could I didn't want to tour anymore at that time. I wanted to stay home and raise my kids. My son was, I think when Badlands was over, my son was 4. And then my daughter was born 3 years later. And I wanted to stay home and raise them and be involved in their lives. They were both involved in sports. I coached both of them through a lot of that. Pictures on the wall behind me are
Yeah.
pictures of baseball or softball. So the reason I got back in the business again, when Jake asked me to be in Red Dragon Cartel, is because my kids were grown and they'd never seen me play on the bigger stage. So I thought now would be a good time to, you know, do that, and they could kind of experience a little bit of, what it was kind of like during the Badlands time.
And do you ever wish that you would have went to college and played baseball, or maybe been a pro baseball player?
Oh, sure, there's a part of me that wishes that, but I was just telling someone the other day what I would have done is went to college and then played pro baseball if I was good enough, and then retired and then picked up the bass and then joined Badlands.
You've been a lot richer, right?
I could have had it all. Yeah.
You could have been a lot richer at that point.
Well, richer is relative terms. I'm rich in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
I don't have any money.
Yeah, well, I'm the same way, man. But I mean, that's the story of all those bands that come out in the '80s and early '90s. A lot of great musicians that make a lot of money. I mean, it was it was a really weird time between '89 and '93 because grunge came in. Those years really started getting weird, and it was like I remember me personally, I was like, I can't stand Nirvana. I can't stand Soundgarden. But I love those bands now. Like one of my favorite bands of all time is Mother Love Bone, who came out in that time period of '87 to '92, I think. And I love Andrew Wood and I love that music. But man, back then I was like, man, this stuff's killed my music. I don't know how many times I said to myself, oh my God, if Andrew Wood would have lived, the grunge sound would have been a whole lot different. It would have been more. I don't know if you know Mother Love Bone at all. I don't know if you've ever heard of.
Ray actually liked them.
You know, they had that sound. It was a newer type of sound than what was that I grew up in the '80s with, like Guns N' Roses, but they were a newer part. So grunge would have been different if he would have lived. Andrew would have lived, I think, and I think a lot of bands would have prospered more in the '90s if Andrew would have lived. That's just my theory in it, but um, it was just a hard time back then, between '89 and '93, because Nirvana came in and it's like everything died. It was like everybody just went on, Warrant quit and this band quit and that band quit, and you were seeing that a lot, right, back then?
Yeah, well, things kind of run its course. The whole LA hair band thing kind of had run its course, and part of the problem was all a lot of guys going to GIT, so there was a whole crap load of shredders out there, and they all kind of sounded the same, and the whole excess of the whole thing kind of, as it kept getting glammier and the hair got bigger and the outfits got flashier. I mean, that stuff has a limited shelf life. It always has, whether it's the music of the '60s, like the San Francisco sound that ran its course after a while. Sure, a few bands survive it. It's like in LA, a few bands survived that whole thing. The the New York punk scene at one time that had its shelf life. The new wave of British heavy metal had its shelf life. The whole LA scene had its shelf life. And some bands that were the bigger bands, whether it's Guns N' Roses or Motley Crue, some of those guys stayed on. And then there's a lot of other bands, like whether it's Dokken or Rat, that still were, doing business. But for a lot of us, that didn't make a whole lot of money to begin with, got to start trying to find other things to do because there aren't any record deals. And, unless you're Motley Crue or some of these other bigger bands, you're not going to be selling out arenas and making huge amounts of money. So you have to kind of find other things to do, or you do what George Lynch does. George plays in 7 or 8 different
Yeah,
projects.
it's got like 8 or 9 projects.
different record, all these different bands with the guys from Striper, or the thing he does, the End Machine with Robert and Jeff Pilson, and I forget who the drummers. I think it's Mick Brown's brother. And then he does a record with Doug Pinick, and so he's got all these different things, and he still does Lynch Mob, and now he does George Lynch. So he's creative, and it's great stuff. But part of that is how he makes his living. He makes his living as a musician, and he's not the only guy. You're going to go be working at the Walmart. This is what he does. He's a world-class guitar player, and him and a lot of guys like him are out playing, and this is their job. This is their career.
Michael Sweet just put out a new album with Tracy Guns.
Yeah, I get offered to do some of that stuff with guys from time to time. I'm just not that interested. I have a guitar store here in Phoenix that I run, and my wife works, so I'm not like searching for my next meal. Not that any of these guys are. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable being here. If the right situation came along, would I go maybe play with someone? If the Rolling Stones called me and asked me to play bass for them, I'd probably do it. Jeff Beck called me, I'd probably do it. I'd probably do it. So.
Speaking of, you spoke of a bass player that is high on my list of great singers, Doug Pinick.
Yep.
What do you think of Doug Pinick as far as what he's done? You're talking about people that do a lot of stuff. Doug Pinnick's done a lot of different projects too, and not just King's X. Heck, there ain't been a King's X album, and I think this new King's X album will be the first one in 15 years that they done.
Doug's a great bass player, great singer. He's kind of like the bass player, very has a kind of Paul McCartney vibe to his bass playing. He's a great singer, great writer, and he's a career musician, and so he goes off and does records with all these different people, and some of them probably sell more than others. I don't really know, but I don't anyone for that. I think they're career musicians. This is what they do. As far as King's X, what's not to like? King's X is a great band. I have 3 or 4 King's X records on my iPhone, and I like their material. It doesn't sound like anybody else, but it's got a kind of a cool Beatles harmony sort of thing. Guitar player's great, drummer's great band.
What's been your favorite tour to ever do?
Say it again?
What's been your favorite tour to ever do? And any of the bands you've been in, what was your favorite tour that you got to go on?
Oh, that I was on?
Yeah.
Oh, the first Badlands tour, it's hard to beat that. We were playing in arenas. We were out with Great White and Tesla for about 6 months. That was a lot of fun, but I also enjoyed when we went out after that and headlined our own 5,000 seat stuff. That was pretty great. And we did some shows with Cinderella that were cool. When the second record came out, we didn't really do arenas anymore because we pissed off the record company enough that they would give us tour support. So we kind of went out on our own and did, 5,000 seaters on down. And we had other bands opening for us, whether it was going to be, I think we had EAD open for us for a while and Soraya open for us for a while. And that was fun. I enjoyed my tour that I did with Red Dragon Cartel. I haven't done a whole ton of touring. I did all the Badlands shows, and I enjoyed all that. I enjoyed all the camaraderie and the musicianship. In Steeler, we did some shows up and down the coast of California. I had a good time. I didn't get my break till later, so anytime anything came along, I always tried to enjoy it and find the good in it and have a good time.
Did you do the Red Dragon Cartel show that was here in Kentucky?
No.
Because they come and played here once. I didn't get to go see them.
Was it on first record.
I think it was the first record.
Yeah, they had the original bass player Ron, and I took his place.
Do you think you'd ever play in Red Dragon Cartel or with Jackie Lee again?
Yeah. Oh, I'd play with Jake again. I mean, I don't. I mean, Jake has Anthony Esposito plays bass with him, and Anthony's a great guy, does a great job with him. I don't think that there's going to be an opening anytime soon, and I'm not 100% sure what they're doing. Jake and I talk pretty frequently, but we don't don't specifically just about nonsense, just stuff that some card he saw or some movie I saw, or did you ever meet this guy, sort of thing. So it's usually just pretty low key. Just
Do you
small
think you'd
talk.
ever? Do you ever think you'd start be part of another super group? Because Badlands was one of the first super groups. Really, Badlands was one of the very first super groups that came out. You know, of like musicians that were in other bands. You know, like Damn Yankees was one, but I consider Badlands a super group because of where you all had been and where you all ended. Like, you know, Eric Singer ended up in Kiss. You know, I mean, do you think that you'd see yourself in another kind of group like that with people that were famous from other bands?
It would depend on who was in the band. It would depend on who, what the situation was going to be. And if we got together, whoever these people are, and we discussed it, and everyone seemed to understand where everyone was coming from, I never say never, so it's possible. I mean, you asked would I play with Jake? Yeah, I'd play with Jake. If Jake put together something or wanted to go do something, I don't even know what it would be, and he called me and said, "Are you interested?" I'd be interested. I'd always be interested in playing. But by the same token, I like playing the times I played with Jeff. And when I was in Red Dragon, I enjoyed playing with Darren, the singer in that band, and Jonas, the drummer in that band. So I'm pretty easygoing as long as everyone's doing their job and everyone can get along. I'm pretty good with it.
And you have a new band. You have a band right now, right? That you're
I
playing
have
in.
a band called Atomic Kings that kind of came out of the dust of another band, and we parted company with our singer from the other band, and we decided to change the name. We got a new singer, and the four of us that are in this band, myself, Ryan McKay, the guitar player, great guitar player, Jimmy Taft, great drummer, and then Ken Ronk, our new vocalist. We decided to call ourselves Atomic Kings. Um, the music is very 70s. Um, and the previous band, Kings of Dust, had a very 70s vibe. We're going to continue on with that, mainly because I co-wrote all the material on that Kings of Dust record, and now the four of us are writing this record, so it has certainly my influences, which are the 70s vibe. Ryan writes a lot of 70s kind of vibe stuff too. Ken's vocals are very soulful and very kind of got a very organic feel to it. So we're going to be doing a record end of summer that will be out hopefully before Christmas. We got a show coming up. Our first show will be in El Paso, Texas on June 12th. So if you're anywhere near El Paso, Texas, come and see Atomic Kings, along with DC4 is the other band. They're the headliner of that.
DC4, yeah, the brothers.
Yeah, it has Jeff and Sean Duncan. Jeff, of course, from Armored Saint. And then Rowan Robertson from Dio plays guitar. And then Matt Duncan, the bass player from Odin. These guys are all great musicians and great friends of mine. I've known them since I lived in LA.
Jeff's a great guy. Sean's a great guy. I know all those guys. And Rowan, it was wild because Rowan went from being in Dio to being in Bang Tango for a while. You know, he was in Bang Tango as a guitar player.
Bang Tango kind of is like some of those other bands that had a revolving door of musicians, and doesn't mean it wasn't great, but there's a lot of guys that have played in a lot of those bands, and they're doing the thing.
So the band that's not anymore, are those going to become songs for your new band, or are you actually releasing that old record as that band name?
No, we're not going to re-release the record. That record is what it is. and we'll play some of those songs live. The record was very well received. We got great reviews. I like the record. The musicianship on the record is top shelf. Everyone played great. I like the way the record sounds. It has a very 70s sort of thing to it. So in Atomic Kings, we'll carry on that same vibe. We'll play some of those songs because I wrote them. Some of them I wrote all of them. Oh. And we'll expand on that with the new songs that we have. We have maybe a dozen new songs that are going to be recorded on this next record. And when we go out, maybe next year we'll play some songs off the Kings of Dust record, but we'll also play the majority of the songs that we'll play will be off the Atomic Kings.
Now, the other band, did you was that independently done, or was that on a label?
No, we did it independently.
And then this new one, is that going to be shopped around to a label, or are you going to do it independently too?
Well, we have a manager, Eddie Cantu, and he's a great manager, and he has some connections. So we'll see. I know we're going to go through Heliphonic Records, which I think is the same label that DC4 is on. So I think, and also Of Gods and Monsters. So I believe we'll be involved in that. We're still kind of working out the logistics of all that. But I would be comfortable with that. The rest of the guys in the band are. It's very much a band. It's not my band. It's a band. It's a democratic band. So, whatever business decision we decide to make, the four of us will decide. But right now, I'm real comfortable with Eddie, and I think it will make good decisions for us in the future. So we're pretty happy.
Are you glad that you're able to get out now in the pandemic and all that? I mean, how'd you survive the last year? Just writing or recording songs, or?
Well, we had a whole tour planned. We had a number of dates we had to cancel, including some overseas, because our record came out on the same day they announced a pandemic, March 13th.
Oh my goodness.
So we had that massive, excellent timing thing. And so rather than sit there and just rehearse the songs over and over again, I decided, I said, hey guys, let's just write a bunch of new songs. And so we just started that process, writing the songs. And then in March, we decided to change singers for some personal reasons. And we got our new singer, Ken Ronk. And then Ryan and I had been kicking around the idea of changing the band name anyway once we changed singers, because we wanted the band to have its own identity. So we came up with Atomic Kings. And lately, in the last 5 weeks or so, we've been rehearsing to do the show that we're going to do in El Paso. And there'll be some songs from the previous record, and there'll also be a handful of Atomic Kings record or songs at this show in El Paso. And we're going to do some other shows this summer as well. So
how can people reach out to you?
I just don't know where they're still working out.
How can people reach out to you if they want you to, say, sign a Steeler CD or a Badlands CD, or pick up the CD you just put out in March? How can people get a hold of you?
Well, there's an Atomic Kings Facebook page. We're just finalizing our website. I don't know what the details of that are. You can go on the Atomic Kings band Facebook page, and if you're interested in buying, the Kings of Dust CD or whatever, we can arrange that. If you want something signed by me from Badlands, you can also do that through there, or you can find me on Facebook, send me a message, and say, hey, Greg. I do this quite frequently, actually, where people will send me a disc or whatever, record, vinyl, whatever, and then I sign it for them and send it back. I don't charge anyone anything, so if they're interested.
What's the most unusual thing you've been asked to sign?
I've signed a baseball glove. I've signed various parts of the female anatomy. I had a guy ask me to sign his dog's collar. I signed a number of baseballs and baseball hats. The stuff like that. A guy had a knife, asked me to sign his knife. Um, and one guy asked me to sign his baby's foot, and I wouldn't do it. I just signed. They had a booty. I signed the booty. I said, not the booty, not the butt, the little baby shoe, the baby.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun talking to you, man, and I wish you all the luck in the future and everything you do. And you know, it's awesome to see that that you took that time to spend with your kids, because a lot of people get caught up in being in bands or being in entertainment, and then their kids are bitter after it's over with. Pro wrestling, I'm a huge pro wrestling fan, and a lot of those kids are bitter because their dad or their mom's not at home. And I commend you for doing that, man, and raising a family, because you could have took a different road. A lot of people do, and it's just been great talking to you. It's been an honor talking to you. Like I said, I remember when I bought Badlands, and I didn't even know what I was listening to, because I was like, so much into glam. It was totally different. And at the time, I bought it because I knew who Jake E. Lee was. I had no clue who Ray Gillen was. I had no clue who Eric Singer was. I had no clue who you were. I just knew that Jake E. Lee had put a new project together, and it was absolutely amazing. And I hope I can. I think it was released on vinyl. I think that album was released on vinyl.
It is, but it's expensive to find.
I think it's a fortune.
It's a fortune.
I wish some label overseas would pick up the rights and re-release all three of them on vinyl. That way we could get them for a little bit cheaper.
Maybe someday. It was a great band to be part of. I'm happy to have been, I'm proud to have been part of it. Its legacy kind of lives on, which is really cool. My kids kind of get to experience. I mean, I kind of did the thing with my kids, because you get one shot. I have two great kids, and I think part of that is because I did kind of give up on the business for that point. My wife, I have a great wife. We've been together a long time. She has her job has kind of made it so that I could do these sort of things. So I could come off the road and give up my career as a musician and just kind of be a regular working slob for a while, which is fine. I've always been just a regular working dude. But I thought raising my kids was important, because I know other musicians that weren't around, and when their kids turned out to be something they weren't happy with, they blame themselves. I didn't want to have to deal with that. Not that every musician that goes on the road's kids turn out bad.
No.
And on the occasion where that does happen, I've seen people in the press say, well, I should have stayed home and should have been home for my kid or whatever. I didn't ever want to do that. And I always wanted to be a dad. So I appreciate the time to be here. Hey, everyone, Atomic Kings, check it out. Find our Facebook page. Send me a friend request. We will be hopefully playing some shows in some of your necks of the woods as we get out there. Looking for our new our release that will be out around Christmas time. You won't be if you like the stuff I've done in the past, you won't be disappointed with what Atomic Kings are.
One last thing. Is there any demo stuff that never made the records?
Sure.
That has Ray on it. Do you think they'll ever see the light of day?
I don't know. Jake owns all that stuff. I mean, I don't even know whether Jake has copies of that stuff. He might. I know I do. And there's on YouTube, there's different demos, and I think people have sold bootlegs of it that, I know Jake and I have never seen a penny of it. But there is stuff out there. We probably wrote 30 songs for the first record. And so there's some stuff out there. And then we wrote some songs that didn't make the second record as well. I have copies of everything, and but I don't have any plans of releasing it. That stuff belongs to Jake, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So knowing Jake as well as I do, I don't think he has any plans of releasing it. But if he did, that'd be fine with me. It shows the transition of when we first started writing. The first songs we wrote, some of them like Ball and Chain and Dancing on the Edge, some of that stuff, and even the last time, which ended up on the second record, some of that is along the lines of what people know Badlands of. But there's other songs on those demos, like there's a song Blue Neon and a song called Black Noon. They don't really sound much like Badlands, but it was us finding our way, finding ourselves. And Jake has used parts of some of those original songs, like on his Fine Pink Mist record. Mm-hmm. And he may have even used some of it on the Red Dragon Cartel stuff. And it's his stuff. He's entitled to do whatever he wants. But whether it ever sees the light of day as a general release, I don't think so.
Well, like I said, it's been great talking to you. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank everybody from Facebook for being here. I hope that